The evil stepmother poured poison into her husband's food, but she didn't realize that her son had switched the plates. Minutes later, something surprising happened. Alicia watched Juan Mendoza from a distance, hidden behind the shadows of a column in the busy shopping mall. She had been tracking him carefully for weeks, studying his movements and habits. Juan, a middle-aged widower and owner of a successful real estate business, was known for his success and discretion. But what Alicia saw in him wasn't just a wealthy man. She saw an opportunity. Determined to approach him, she devised a plan she was sure would work. She waited for the perfect moment until Juan headed towards the parking lot with his car keys in hand. Alicia, dressed in an outfit that highlighted her figure without being too obvious, walked toward him. As she passed by, she deliberately tripped and dropped her keys on the ground. "Oh, how clumsy I am," she exclaimed with a shy smile as she bent down to pick them up. Juan, ever the gentleman, bent down at the same time to help her. At that moment, Alicia's cleavage became exposed, just enough to catch Juan's attention. The man, surprised, stared at her chest for a few seconds before quickly realizing and looking away. "Sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," Juan said as he picked up the keys and stood up, handing them to her. Alicia stood slowly, with a kind smile that hid her satisfaction. "Don't worry, it was an accident." "Thank you for helping me," she replied, looking him directly in the eyes. There was an awkward silence, broken by Alicia, who pointed to Juan's car. "Nice car. You must be a person with great taste." Juan, though reserved, couldn't help but smile at the compliment. "Thank you. I like to take care of the details." Alicia noticed the crack in the man's armor and seized the opportunity. "That's important. I also believe it's the details that make the difference in everything, don't you think?" she asked casually, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Juan nodded, unsure of how to continue the conversation. Alicia took the initiative. "Would you like a coffee?" "My treat. It's the least I can do for someone so kind." Juan hesitated for a moment, but eventually accepted. Something about Alicia's confidence intrigued him. At the nearby cafe, the conversation flowed naturally. Alicia knew exactly how to steer the conversation toward Juan's passions, making him feel valued. He talked about his business, his son Arturo, and the challenges of being a single father. Alicia, for her part, showed understanding, sharing stories about her own son, Nicholas, and the struggle of being a dedicated mother. "It must be tough for you," Alicia said, leaning slightly toward him. "Raising a teenager without a partner to support you." Juan sighed, stirring his coffee. "It's a challenge, but Arturo is a good kid. Although lately, he's been a bit distant. I guess it's just his age." Alicia smiled, showing calculated empathy. "Young people always go through difficult phases, but I'm sure that with a father like you, he'll get through it." Juan looked at her with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. There was something about Alicia that made him feel at ease, something he hadn't felt since his wife's death. In the following weeks, Alicia and Juan began to see each other more often. Each meeting seemed casual, but behind every kind gesture from Alicia was a clear intention. She made sure to show interest in the topics that mattered to Juan, emphasized her maternal side to get closer to Nicholas, and presented herself as the ideal woman who could bring stability to his life. "Juan, I have to tell you something," she said one day as they walked through a park. "I didn't expect to meet you, but I feel there's a special connection between us." Juan stopped, surprised by the sincerity of her words. "I feel the same way, Alicia. I wasn't looking for this, but with you, it's different. It's easy to talk, to trust." She took his hand and looked at him tenderly. Maybe fate had something planned for both of us. After months of friendship that soon turned into something deeper, Juan made a decision that would change the dynamic of his family. During an intimate dinner, as Alicia held his hand, he proposed marriage. "Alicia, I don't know how you did it, but you've brought light into my life. I want us to be a family, to be together." She pretended to be surprised, placing a hand on her chest. "Juan, of course. I want to build a life with you." While Juan hugged her, Alicia smiled, but not because of the love he thought he saw. In her mind, the plan was unfolding exactly as she had predicted. Now, she had a position within the Mendoza family, and it was only a matter of time before her true objective was revealed. Weeks later, Alicia was comfortably settled into her new life as Mrs. Mendoza. The imposing family house was a reflection of Juan's success, but to her, it represented something more, the first step toward total control. In the weeks following the wedding, Alicia skillfully used her charm to win the trust of Juan and Nicholas while setting subtle boundaries with Arturo. Arturo watched the changes in the family dynamic with growing concern. His relationship with his father, already strained after his mother's death, was now even more fractured. Juan seemed oblivious to Alicia's calculated moves, blinded by the illusion that he had found someone to bring stability into their lives. One night, Alicia approached Juan while he was working in his study. She carried a glass of wine and a carefully calculated smile. "Love, you should take a break. You're working too much," she said, setting the glass down on the table. Juan looked up and smiled, grateful. "You're right. Sometimes I get lost in all of this. But I want to make sure everything is right for us." Alicia sat next to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "That's what I admire most about you, Juan. Your dedication. But you don't have to carry everything alone. I'm here to help." Juan looked at her in some surprise. "Help me? How?" "I could get a little involved in the management. Check the accounts, coordinate small tasks. That way, you'd have more time for us." Juan seemed to hesitate, but Alicia's gentle pressure and understanding gaze convinced him. "That could be a good idea, but I'd have to teach you a few details first." Alicia smiled widely, hiding her satisfaction. She had taken the first step. As Alicia built her relationship with Juan, the tension with Arturo grew. He noticed every small controlling gesture, every furtive glance Alicia made when she thought no one was watching. One night, Arturo confronted her in the kitchen while she was preparing dinner. "What are you really planning, Alicia?" he asked, crossing his arms. Alicia turned to him with an innocent expression. "What are you talking about, Arturo? I'm just trying to make this house a home for everyone. You're not convincing me. Something's not right with you. My dad may not see it, but I do." Alicia set the knife down on the cutting board and slowly walked toward him. "Listen, Arturo. I know this is hard for you, but I'm not here to replace your mother. I'm here to help your father and Nicholas. We could get along if you wanted." Arturo stared at her, searching for a crack in her facade. "I don't trust you." Alicia kept smiling, but her eyes flashed with a coldness Arturo would never forget. "That's something you'll have to get over." That same night, Arturo decided to silently follow Alicia. She went out to the backyard, talking on the phone with someone. Arturo couldn't hear everything, but he caught some disturbing fragments. "Don't worry. Juan trusts me completely. Yes, I'm handling Arturo, though he's more stubborn than I expected. Everything will be ready soon." Arturo clenched his fists, feeling the air fill with suspicion. The next day, he told his friend Diego what he had heard. "I need to know what she's doing," Arturo said as they walked through the park. "And how do you plan to do that? You can't accuse her without proof." "Your dad won't believe you," Diego replied, concerned. "I'll look for evidence. There has to be something that proves he's lying." Diego nodded, though with doubts. He knew Arturo was stepping into dangerous territory. Alicia, aware that Arturo was an obstacle, began working to isolate him. She seized every opportunity to discredit him in front of Juan. "Juan, I'm worried about Arturo. He seems distant, and I think he might be going through something," she said with a compassionate voice. Juan sighed, concerned. "It's adolescence. It's been tough for him since his mother passed away. He just needs time. Maybe you should talk to him." "I try to get closer, but he doesn't let me." Juan nodded, unaware that Alicia was planting doubts in his mind. Arturo noticed the change in his father's attitude, who began to question everything he did. "What's been going on with you lately, Arturo? Alicia says you're acting strange." "Is it true?" Juan asked one night. "Are you seriously believing everything she says?" Arturo replied, frustrated. "It's not about believing or not. I'm trying to understand you." Arturo felt his father's words like a blow. Alicia was gaining ground, and he was losing Juan's trust. Meanwhile, Nicholas, Alicia's young son, started noticing strange behaviors in his mother. One night, while playing on the living room floor, he overheard Alicia talking to someone on the phone. "I can't fail at this. Everything I've done is for Nicholas, but if Arturo keeps interfering, I'll have to take action." Nicholas didn't fully understand what his mother meant, but her tone scared him. The next day, he told Arturo what he had heard. "My mom was talking weird last night. She said something about you. Are you in trouble, Arturo?" Arturo bent down to his half-brother and hugged him. "Don't worry, Nico. Everything will be fine." But inside, he knew things were far from fine. The chapter ends with Alicia looking at Juan's financial documents in her room, a satisfied smile on her face. Meanwhile, Arturo, determined to protect his family, vows to uncover the truth and confront it, no matter the cost. Tension rises, and the Mendoza family begins to fracture beneath the surface as Alicia's game intensifies. The clock read 7 o'clock when Alicia began preparing dinner. The warm lights of the kitchen contrasted with the coldness that had taken over the home in recent weeks. Her smile seemed calm, but every movement was filled with calculated intentions. In the pocket of her apron, a small package containing a whitish powder rested hidden, waiting for the right moment. Arturo watched from the living room. Something about the atmosphere felt off. Alicia had insisted on preparing a special dinner, and although his father was excited about the idea, Arturo couldn't shake the words he'd overheard days earlier during Alicia's phone conversation. Nicholas, unaware of the tensions hidden within the walls of the home, played with a toy car on the rug. His childish laughter was a cruel contrast to the shadow hanging over the Mendoza family. In the kitchen, Alicia poured the contents of the package into a small container. Her hand trembled slightly before mixing the powder with a sauce she had prepared for dinner. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of determination and anxiety. Juan walked in just then, interrupting her. "It smells delicious, Alicia. Do you need any help?" Alicia smiled, quickly turning to hide what she was doing. "No, darling. Everything's under control. Tonight is special. I want you to relax." Juan kissed her on the forehead and returned to the living room, not noticing the flash of nervousness in his wife's eyes. Arturo, still watching from a distance, decided to move closer to the kitchen. He found a simple excuse, like getting a drink, to observe more closely. "Do you need something, Arturo?" Alicia asked with a sweetness he knew wasn't genuine. "Just a glass of water," he replied, glancing sideways at the counter. He noticed a small empty package near the sink, but Alicia quickly covered it with a cloth. Arturo raised the glass to his lips, but his attention was fixed on Alicia. Something was happening, and he was determined to find out what it was. The family sat down at the table, which was set with an unusual elegance for an ordinary dinner. Alicia served the dishes, making sure to place the sauce she had specially prepared on one of them, Arturo's. Her smile was flawless, but her gaze was focused, watching every movement. Nicholas, sitting beside Arturo, looked at the plates with curiosity. "I want Arturo's plate. It looks better," he said with the innocence of a small child. "Nicholas, eat what you've been given," Alicia replied in a firmer tone than usual. "But I want that one," Nicholas insisted, reaching for his stepbrother's plate. Arturo, who hadn't taken his eyes off Alicia's actions, saw this as an opportunity. He lifted his plate and handed it to Nicholas without thinking. "Fine, Nico. Take this one." Alicia watched the scene with a mix of disbelief and panic. Before she could say anything, Nicholas had already started eating. Alicia tried to maintain her composure for the rest of the dinner, but her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Every bite Nicholas took felt like a dagger to her conscience, and even though she tried to hide it, Arturo kept staring at her, as if he knew exactly what was going on. "Are you okay, Alicia?" Juan asked, noticing her unease. "Yes, I'm fine. Just tired from preparing dinner," she replied, forcing a smile. But as the minutes passed, Alicia began to feel dizzy. Her hands trembled slightly, and a wave of nausea overtook her. Arturo, watching her decline, squinted his eyes. His instincts told him that something was terribly wrong. Finally, Alicia couldn't take it anymore and stood up from the table. I need to go to the bathroom, she said, staggering slightly before leaving the dining room. Juan followed her, concerned, but Arturo stayed seated. He looked at Nicholas, who was still eating calmly. Are you feeling okay, Nico? Arturo asked, trying to hide his anxiety. Yeah, why? Everything's delicious, the boy replied. Arturo felt a mix of relief and anger. What had happened couldn't be a coincidence, and he was sure Alicia had tried something against him. Hours later, when Nicholas was already asleep, Arturo waited for his father to go upstairs to Alicia's room to take care of her. He seized the moment to search the kitchen. He found the empty package he had seen earlier, put it in a plastic bag, and took it to his room. The next morning, he decided to confront Alicia privately. What are you doing, Arturo? Alicia asked when she saw him enter her room unannounced. Arturo held the bag in front of her. What's this? What did you try to do last night? Alicia looked at him with a coldness she had never shown before. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb with me. I saw it. I saw how nervous you got when Nicholas switched the plates. You were doing something and it went wrong. Alicia took a step toward him with a sarcastic smile. And what are you going to do with this, Arturo? Tell your dad? You think he's going to believe you? You're just a kid who hasn't gotten over the death of his mom. Arturo clenched his fists, but refused to back down. I'm going to prove who you really are, Alicia. You won't get away with it. The chapter ends with Alicia looking at Arturo with a mix of defiance and threat. The tension between them is about to explode, and the power balance in the Mendoza family is more fragile than ever. The next morning, Alicia woke up with a heavy body and a bitter taste in her mouth. The nausea was still present, reminding her that something had gone terribly wrong during the dinner. As she tried to stand, she heard the sound of Nicholas playing in the living room. She took a deep breath and headed toward him, determined to pull herself together before Juan or Arturo noticed her condition. Nicholas, sitting on the rug with his toys, smiled as he saw her approach. Mom, do you feel better yet? He asked with childlike curiosity, setting his cars aside. Alicia, hiding her discomfort, sat next to him. She tried to project calm, but her mind kept replaying the events of the previous night. Yes, sweetie. It was just a little discomfort. Nothing serious, she replied, gently stroking her son's hair. Nicholas paused and looked at her with big, bright eyes. Mom, I need to tell you something. But please don't get mad, okay? Alicia furrowed her brow, feeling a pang of unease. What's wrong, Nico? You can tell me. The boy lowered his voice as if sharing a big secret. Last night, I swapped Dad's plate with yours. Yours looked tastier, and I wanted to try it. Alicia felt the air grow heavy around her. Her mind began to connect the dots, the discomfort that had left her weak, Nicholas's unexpected reaction, and the failed execution of her plan. What did you do? She asked coldly, grabbing Nicholas's arm without realizing it. The boy shrank back, surprised by his mother's reaction. I just swapped the plates, Mom. I thought it wouldn't matter. Was that wrong? Alicia released him, realizing her reaction, and forced a smile to calm him down. It's not wrong, Nico, but you shouldn't do that. You could have hurt yourself or hurt me. You never know what could happen. Nicholas nodded quickly, feeling guilty. I'm sorry, Mom. I won't do it again. Alicia hugged him, but in her mind, guilt and anger mixed. She had made a mistake that had nearly cost her own plan. Despite her feelings for Juan, her love for her son was sincere. Knowing that Nicholas had been in danger because of her carelessness filled her with a mixture of remorse and fury toward herself. Thank goodness it was just a small dose, she whispered to herself as she stroked Nicholas's hair. Arturo, for his part, had not stopped suspecting that something dark was happening in the family. Determined to get answers, he waited for the right moment to search Alicia's things. He took advantage of Juan and Nicholas's absence to enter his stepmother's room. Carefully, he searched through the drawers and found her purse. Upon opening it, the first thing he saw was a small bottle containing remnants of a whitish powder. Next to it, There were folded sheets with notes that caught his attention. The sheets contained a detailed plan to manipulate Juan's finances, with calculations on how to ensure the inheritance passed entirely into her name. There were explicit references to Arturo as an obstacle and veiled mentions of eliminating the problem permanently. Arturo felt cold sweat running down his back. The evidence was irrefutable. Alicia wasn't just trying to manipulate his father, she had planned to eliminate him too. He packed the evidence into his backpack and left the room with his heart racing. He knew confronting Alicia wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to stop her. Hours later, Nicholas entered Arturo's room with a worried expression. "What's wrong, Nico?" Arturo asked, seeing him. "I need to tell you something. But don't tell Mom I told you," the boy whispered, coming closer. "I promise." "What happened?" Nicholas took a deep breath before speaking. "Last night, I swapped Mom's plate with Dad's. I didn't know it was wrong, but I think it made her feel bad. She told me not to do it again." Arturo stood silent for a moment, processing Nicholas's words. Finally, he stroked his hair and smiled. "You did the right thing, Nico. Thanks for telling me. But don't tell anyone else, okay? This is our secret." Nicholas nodded, fully trusting his older brother. Arturo, on the other hand, felt how the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Alicia had tried to poison Juan, but Nicholas unknowingly had saved his father's life. That night, Arturo decided it was time to confront Alicia. He walked into the living room, where she was sitting, looking at her phone. "We need to talk," he said in a firm tone. Alicia looked up, pretending curiosity. "What's it about, Arturo?" Arturo pulled the jar and documents out of his backpack, throwing them on the table in front of her. "About this. About your plans to take my father's fortune. About how you tried to poison him last night." Alicia remained calm, although her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're making things up to make me look bad. Don't lie. Nicholas told me he switched the plates. You wanted to harm my dad, and you almost harmed yourself." Alicia stood up slowly, walking toward Arturo. "Listen to me, you brat. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Everything I've done has been for Nicholas's sake and to protect this family." "Protect?" Arturo responded with a bitter laugh. "You're not protecting anyone. You're just destroying us." Alicia stared at him, a mix of defiance and threat in her eyes. "If you keep sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, you'll regret it, Arturo. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Arturo didn't back down. "Do what you want, Alicia. But I won't stop. I'll expose you, even if it's the last thing I do." The chapter ends with Alicia watching Arturo leave the room as rage and despair take over her. The tension in the house is at its peak, and the war between them is far from over. The warm light of the afternoon filtered through the windows of Juan's office as he reviewed some financial documents. Alicia entered with her characteristic soft step, carrying a cup of coffee for her husband. While maintaining her facade of a devoted wife, her mind was constantly working on how to solidify her control over the Mendoza fortune. "Here you go, love," she said, placing the cup on the table. "You've been working a lot lately. Is everything okay?" Juan sighed and pushed the papers aside. "Yeah, I'm just reviewing some details of my late wife's will." The mention of Juan's ex-wife triggered an alarm in Alicia's mind, but she kept her composure. "Is there something in particular that's worrying you?" she asked, sitting beside him. Juan was silent for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking it's time to tell you something important. Something you might not know about our finances." Alicia narrowed her eyes, trying not to show too much interest. "Of course, Juan. You know you can trust me." Juan took a deep breath before continuing. "The money, the inheritance, all of it comes from my late wife. Her family was very wealthy, and when she passed away, she left most of her fortune in a trust for Arturo. I only have access to a portion to cover household expenses and Arturo's education. Everything else, including the property, belongs to him." Alicia's heart raced. Every word from Juan confirmed what she feared. Juan wasn't the true owner of the fortune, and his position in the family was more precarious than she'd imagined. "Does that mean if something happens to Arturo, you'd be the heir?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Juan nodded. "Exactly. But I don't want to think about that. Arturo is my son, and all of this is to secure his future. Alicia smiled, but behind her calm expression, her mind was scheming a new plan. That night, after making sure Juan was asleep, Alicia locked herself in the bathroom with her phone. She dialed a number she had memorized, and a male voice answered on the other end. "How's it going?" he asked with a relaxed tone. "Bad. Juan has nothing. He's a nobody. The inheritance, the house, everything is in Arturo's name. If I go through with this, I need to make sure Arturo disappears so that the inheritance goes to Juan. Are you sure you want to do this?" The man replied with a hint of disbelief. "This isn't just a slip-up. We're talking about something much bigger." Alicia gritted her teeth, gripping the phone tightly. "Don't come to me with doubts now. We've been planning this all this time, and I'm not going to let some kid ruin it. We need to get rid of Arturo. Juan will be the heir, and after that, he won't be a problem either." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before her lover responded. "All right, tell me what you need." Alicia began to devise a plan that involved a mix of manipulation and calculated danger. Over the following days, she feigned interest in the relationship between Juan and Arturo, suggesting they spend more time together. "Juan, you're always working. Why don't you take Arturo fishing? I'm sure he'd love to spend time with you," she said at breakfast. Juan, who had been concerned about the growing distance between him and his son, nodded. "That's a good idea. I'll tell him we'll go this weekend." Alicia smiled, hiding the satisfaction that her plan was moving forward. She knew she had to act fast. Meanwhile, Nicholas began to notice that his mother was more tense than usual. One night, while playing near his bedroom door, he overheard Alicia speaking softly on the phone. "Everything is ready. On the fishing trip, something will go wrong. After that, everything will be easier." Nicholas dropped his toy, feeling a chill. He didn't fully understand what his mother's words meant, but he knew Arturo was in danger. He decided to tell Arturo what he had heard. "Arturo, I think Mom is planning something bad. She said something will go wrong when you go fishing with Dad." Arturo looked at Nicholas seriously, feeling his time to act was running out. "Thanks for telling me, Nico. Don't worry, I won't let anything bad happen." Arturo decided to confront his father with the evidence he had gathered, including financial transactions and Alicia's phone records. "Dad, you need to listen to me. Alicia isn't who she says she is. She's plotting something against me." Juan, though initially skeptical, began to put the pieces together. Alicia's strange behavior, the tensions in the house, the constant questions about the inheritance. It was all starting to make sense. When Juan confronted Alicia that night, she tried to manipulate him once again. "Are you really going to believe a kid? Arturo's always tried to separate us. I can't believe you doubt me after everything I've done for this family." But this time, Juan wasn't willing to back down. "I can't ignore what Arturo showed me. Alicia, you've only been here for your own interest. If all of this is true, I'll hold you accountable for what you've done." Alicia stared at Juan, her facade finally shattered, as the tension reached a breaking point. Arturo and Nicholas watched from the shadows, knowing the truth was finally coming to light. The Mendoza house seemed quieter than usual, but within that silence lay tensions ready to explode. Alicia, growing more anxious, paced the hall, checking her phone frequently. Arturo watched from the shadows, convinced something big was about to happen. Nicholas, in his innocence, tried to stay close to his older brother, feeling protected in an environment he didn't fully understand. Alicia had meticulously planned every detail of her strategy, but Arturo had begun to unravel her plans with his persistence. That morning, while Juan was at the office, Alicia locked herself in the study to make an urgent call. "This can't go on. Arturo is too close to discovering everything," she said softly. Her lover responded with concern. "What are you going to do? If he finds out more, it could ruin everything." Alicia gripped the phone tightly, her patience wearing thin. "I'll handle it. Just be ready. If it gets complicated, I need you to take the money and disappear for a while." I didn't know that Nicholas, who was playing near the office, had overheard parts of the conversation. The boy stood still, scared, and ran to find Arturo. Nicholas found Arturo in his room, going over notes he had kept about Alicia's suspicious activities. His stepbrother entered, running, with a worried look on his face. "Arturo, I heard Mom say something strange. She was talking on the phone and said that you were close to discovering something and that she needed to fix it." Arturo put the notes aside and leaned toward Nicholas. "What else did she say?" "Think carefully, Nico. This is important." Nicholas made an effort to remember. "She also said something about taking money and that someone needed to disappear." "I didn't understand everything, but I was scared." Arturo grabbed Nicholas by the shoulders. "Thanks for telling me. You did the right thing. Stay here. Don't leave until I say so." Nicholas nodded, trusting Arturo completely, and the teenager left the room with renewed resolve. Arturo waited until Alicia was alone in the kitchen before confronting her. He entered with firm steps and placed the documents he had gathered on the table. "Enough, Alicia. I know what you're doing." Alicia, surprised, tried to remain calm. "What are you talking about now, Arturo? Another one of your paranoid fantasies?" Arturo pointed to the documents. "These transactions, these messages. All of this proves that you're manipulating my dad. And Nicholas told me what you were saying on the phone. You're planning something against me, aren't you?" Alicia let out a bitter laugh. "And what are you going to do with that? Cry to your dad? He won't believe you. You've always acted like a troublesome kid who can't accept that your dad has moved on." Arturo stood firm. "I'm not the same kid you took advantage of when you got here. And this time, you're not getting away with it." Alicia stared at him, a mix of fury and defiance in her eyes. "Listen to me, Arturo. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I don't lose, and if I need to remove you from my way, I will." Arturo took a step toward her, his voice firm. "What you don't understand is that I'm not alone anymore. Nicholas is on my side, and sooner or later, my dad will see who you really are." That night, Arturo decided it was time to tell Juan everything. He entered the office where his father was reviewing emails and placed the documents on the table. "Dad, we need to talk. You can't keep ignoring this." Juan looked up, confused. "What's all this?" "Proof that Alicia isn't who she says she is. She's been manipulating you from the start, and now she's planning something against me to take Mom's inheritance." Juan looked at the documents and read them in silence. His face changed from disbelief to concern. "Is this true?" he finally asked. Arturo nodded. "Yes, and Nicholas also heard things that confirm what's going on. You can't keep denying it." Juan leaned back in his chair, processing the information. "I need to talk to Alicia." When Juan confronted Alicia, she tried one last time to manipulate him. "Juan, this is crazy. Arturo has always tried to tear us apart. You can't believe these lies." But Juan, with the documents in hand, looked at her sternly. "Explain these transactions, these notes. And Nicholas heard you talking about getting rid of Arturo. How do you explain that?" Alicia, feeling cornered, finally showed her true face. "You know what, Juan? You're right. All of this was for the inheritance. But you're so naive you never would have noticed if it weren't for your son. What are you going to do now? Call the police? Ruin your precious reputation?" Juan felt a knot in his stomach as he heard Alicia's confession. He looked at Arturo, who was standing by the door, and then at Nicholas, who was watching from the stairs, frightened but determined. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family. And that starts with getting you out of this house." An hour later, Alicia was escorted out of the house by the police while the Mendoza family tried to recover. The emotional wounds were deep, but the truth had finally come to light. The battle wasn't over, but Arturo and Juan knew they could face whatever came next together. The night was thick and oppressive as the police escorted Alicia to the station. Her face, once a weapon of charm and manipulation, was now marked by a mix of rage and determination. In the patrol car, her mind worked at a dizzying speed. Alicia knew prison wasn't an option. She wouldn't be broken. The officer driving glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Alicia noticed the interest in his eyes and flashed a calculated smile. She leaned slightly forward, deliberately showing her vulnerability. "Do you really think I'm a criminal?" she said in a soft, almost seductive tone. "Everything I've done, I did for my son. I want him to be safe." The officer looked away, uncomfortable. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am. If you're innocent, it will be proven in court." Alicia let out a dramatic sigh, allowing a tear to roll down her cheek. "What if I don't have time? What if they take my son before I can prove my innocence?" The officer seemed to hesitate. Alicia seized this moment to intensify her act. "You have a family, don't you? You wouldn't do anything for them?" The officer nodded, trying not to look directly at her. Alicia knew she had him. When the patrol car reached a secluded spot on the road, Alicia saw her chance. She pretended to feel dizzy and asked to get out for some air. The officer, visibly affected by her earlier words, agreed. But quickly, "We can't waste time," he said, opening the door. Alicia stepped out, staggering, but as soon as her feet hit the ground, she regained her composure. She approached the officer, thanking him with a smile. "Thank you. I really needed this." Before he could react, Alicia hit him in the face with a stone she had picked up from the ground. The man collapsed to the ground, stunned. Alicia grabbed his weapon and pointed it at him while stepping back toward the cliff that ran along the road. "I'm not going to prison. I'd rather die than be locked up," she yelled, a mix of defiance and desperation in her voice. The officer, bleeding from the cut on his brow, tried to calm her down. "Alicia, don't do this. There are other ways to resolve this." Alicia let out a bitter laugh. "Resolve it? No one resolves anything for me. I've always had to fight alone." Without another word, she took a step back and jumped into the void. Her figure disappeared among the bushes of the cliff. The officer, still stunned, called for backup. But when the search began, they only found traces of blood and torn fabric. Alicia had disappeared. Meanwhile, the police had managed to locate Alicia's lover thanks to the evidence presented by Arturo and the phone records. They arrested him in his apartment, finding documents and transactions linking him to Alicia's plans. In the interrogation room, the man was defiant at first, but as the agents presented the evidence, he began to crack. "She manipulated me," he said finally, his hands trembling. "She made me believe it was all for her son, but all she cared about was the money. None of it was real." The agents didn't fully believe him, but his confession helped strengthen the case against Alicia, though she was still on the run. Back at the Mendoza house, the tension had lessened slightly, but the emotional scars were still fresh. Nicholas, hugging Arturo, cried uncontrollably. "Why did Mom do all this?" he asked through his sobs. Arturo hugged him tighter. "Sometimes people do bad things because they think it's the only way to get what they want. But that doesn't mean it's your fault, Nico. You're not to blame for anything." Juan, standing near them, felt a wave of guilt. He had been blind to the signs, allowing Alicia to infiltrate their lives. "Nicholas, from now on, you'll be with us. I'll do everything I can to make you feel safe and loved," Juan said, his voice breaking. A few days later, the judge granted Juan full custody of Nicholas. The child was now legally under Juan's care, and Juan promised to be the father Nicholas deserved. A few days later, Arturo found a note in the mailbox. It was handwritten and only said, "This isn't over. I'm closer than you think." Though there was no signature, Arturo knew immediately it was from Alicia. The young man pocketed the note, deciding not to share it with his father or Nicholas. The Mendoza family tried to rebuild their lives while a threat loomed in the shadows. Alicia, though missing, remained an unsettling presence, and her promise to return echoed as a warning that the danger hadn't passed yet. The sun shone over the Mendoza house, but within its walls, the echo of the turbulence they had gone through was still felt. Juan and Arturo were in the living room while Nicholas played nearby, seemingly carefree. However, the silence was fragile. They knew Alicia's threat still lingered, but this time they were prepared. A week after receiving the anonymous note, Arturo began to notice strange movements around the house. Shadows between the trees, a car parked for hours at the corner. He knew Alicia wasn't ready to let things lie. That night, while everyone slept, he heard a noise at the back of the house. He immediately got up and, with a flashlight in hand, went out into the yard. There, in the shadows, he saw Alicia, her clothes torn and her face marked with desperation. "What are you doing here?" Arturo asked, trying to remain calm. Alicia looked at him with a mixture of hatred and determination. "This doesn't end until I say it ends. You took everything from me, Arturo. You stole the life I deserved. You destroyed your own life. You didn't have to do any of this, but you chose the wrong path." Alicia took a step toward him, but Arturo didn't back down. "Let me warn you about something. You no longer have power here. The police are on their way, and this time you won't escape." Alicia looked around, seeing the lights of neighbors starting to come on. She knew she had no way out. In one last desperate attempt, she ran toward the woods, but tripped and fell, getting stuck in a ravine. The police arrived shortly after and finally arrested her. Alicia, defeated, was taken away in handcuffs, her face reflecting the exhaustion of a battle she could no longer win. With Alicia behind bars and her lover cooperating with authorities to close the case, the Mendoza family was finally able to begin healing. Juan, determined to be a better father, spent more time with Nicholas and Arturo. The wounds didn't heal immediately, but together they began to find a new balance. One afternoon, while they were at the park, Nicholas took the hands of Juan and Arturo. "Are we a family now?" he asked with a shy smile. Juan kneeled to look him in the eyes. "We've always been a family, Nico, but now we're stronger." Arturo nodded, placing a hand on his younger brother's shoulder. "And we'll always be here for you." A few days later, Arturo found his mother's inheritance letter. In it, his mother spoke of the importance of family and how true love should always prevail over greed and ambition. "She always knew what really matters," he said to Juan as he read the letter aloud. "Now it's our turn to honor that," Juan replied, with a determined look. Finally, the Mendoza family shared a warm dinner, laughing and enjoying each other's company. The scars from the past hadn't disappeared, but love and unity gave them the strength to move forward. As the lights of the house went out, one last thought echoed in Arturo's mind. The truth always prevails, and even though the path to justice may be difficult, it's always worth traveling. With this story, we take away a powerful reflection on resilience, the importance of family, and the ability to rise again after facing darkness. The satisfaction comes from seeing the characters grow, learn, and find the peace they so deserved, making it clear that even in the most difficult circumstances, there is always hope. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments what you would do in a similar situation. We invite you to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends or family as a sign of support. This motivates us to continue posting emotional stories almost every day. Don't miss the next amazing narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We greatly appreciate having you here with us. You can click on the links appearing on your screen right now. We have an exclusive selection of captivating stories and guaranteed entertainment just for you. See you in the next video. A hug.